Welcome to our very first edition introduction with Self 2024. With the introduction video, we want everyone to listen to the presentation you in your season. We educate and motivate on everything. Ribea Elise Seasons. To Raising New Season with South 2024. And our introduction to our South video today reminds us of our requirement to learn to be responsible in our seasons. Our seasons that sometimes require so much of us, that sometimes requires us to be attentive to what is fine for us in season and requires us to allow ourselves into the room of seasons. I would be in the South 2024 year of our editions have the discussion of the 4-0 room. That is my 40th celebration year. That is the opportunity that sometimes allows you to allow yourself the opportunity. And therefore, with Self 2024 this year, I have the requirement to respond to myself in season. And therefore, my motivation to everyone out there, to our listeners, to everyone who's going to press play on our video, is to really respond to that. That is, where do they find themselves at in their seasons? I remember we're going to discuss the birth of that is the challenges that our family had when we moved to Chicago, Bonsabook Street, and how we arise in the challenges that we had, and how we allowed ourselves to recognize ourselves in all that is required us in our seasons. And I remember my 4 brothers, those years, they had to make direct decisions about and they had to make the decisions that they don't only recognize themselves in the seasons, but they recognize everything that is required of us in seasons, that is everyone else. And therefore, with beginning our self-introduction video, we want to welcome everyone into our discussion room this year. With our self-introduction room, we are going to share on the motivation of our journey self. That is the edition 1 video. That is our motivations to whatever it is that we might have to give ourselves recognition of in our seasons, that so many times we were giving other people recognition for. And therefore, in season, enjoy the season with us. I remember those years. I speak a lot about my brothers because the men in the house plays the same way an important part the woman plays in the house. And therefore, I recognize them, and our sisters always, and my mother will recognize the men in our house. And we therefore allow ourselves to educate that when the men in our house were challenged, they required us to respond to that that is fine, and they require us to listen to what is fine for us. We had challenges where we had to move to Coast River community, and we're gonna share on the video on every requirement that they then had when we moved to the different community. The Coast River community with our family, how my brothers then had to allow themselves into a different environment. I had to allow myself into a different environment and into the different challenge that we were now exposed to, that was now different environment that we once again grew up at. And I remember the responsibility that belongs to us and that we had to, right? And I remember when my sister then traveled from England to pay for my studies, and I had to stay at Cape University Technikon, and I was then studying public management at the time, and how I learned the differences in the financial circumstances of households in the country. I remember made me questioning option. And I remember deciding that human resources sound somewhat to me like a logical career for a Ribea Elise person, right? Because I was now not really that educated in finance. And I remember making the choice that day. I then learned to give myself recognition with where I was required to be at. I then moved on to Nublibert and Poland Builded in my human resources career. And I then found myself on a journey of getting to know myself, right? On a journey of being introduced to self in your season, on a journey that requires you to respond to self in your season, and on a journey where you have the opportunity to recognize self in every season, right? A journey that educates us the 4 seasons, the winter, the spring season, the summer season, the autumn season, the presentation of that, that is seasons making way to introduce seasons. And therefore, with everything new and our everything new requirement in season, we allow ourselves to own the right to present ourselves in our seasons. We allow ourselves to own the right to represent our in our seasons. We allow ourselves the right to represent the you that are required in your seasons, right? The you that are the apostrophe Ribea Elise, right? Ribea that are not opposed to Ribea. The recognition self, the recognition that we are required to allow ourselves to present, to represent ourselves, representing that we own through our seasons. The recognition that are due us, that when we educate in our evoke fashion, we educate to present ourselves through our seasons. A recognition that only us can allow ourselves to add unto, and recognition that only us can allow ourselves to be transformed at. It is that requirement that fashion requires us to respond to ourselves in our seasons. And when we learn as a generation of people to respond to ourselves in our seasons, we learn therefore to respond in a way that is fine for ourselves and for others. And therefore, in this season of our very first edition with self, we give recognition to us in our seasons with the 4-0, recognizing the journey of seasons, recognizing the journey that we are required to present in our seasons, recognizing the journey that we are required to take through seasons, a journey that only you can present, a journey that only you can allow yourself at.